Oscar Piastri isn't saying much, but that's the problem, isn't it? When a driver's silence hits harder than another's podium celebration, you know something's up. This isn't just about one race or one pit stop. This is about a rising tension at McLaren that's turning into something no PR department can patch up. It's about two drivers, two narratives, and one team that might be backing the wrong horse. Let's talk about what really happened at Monza. Not just the slow pit stop, not just the team radio moment, but the shift in energy that followed. Piastri, the quiet assassin, had already proven himself at Zandvoort with a clinical lights-to-flag win. He was composed, fast, and fully in control. That was the kind of drive that makes team bosses sit up, the kind that says, you can build a championship around this guy. Then Monza happens. A slow stop for Norris, unfortunate but common. But instead of letting both drivers race it out fairly, McLaren hits the team orders button. And who gets asked to make the sacrifice? Not the guy who had a clean stop, not the one holding position. No, it's Piastri again, told to move over. And he does it, but not before asking the one question that cut through all the noise. Didn't we say a slow stop is part of racing? That's not just a passive-aggressive jab. That's a spotlight on favoritism. And whether McLaren admits it or not, that moment turned a lot of heads inside the garage and across the grid. Mark Webber certainly noticed. The former F1 star turned manager is not one to stir the pot unless he's got something cooking. And right now, he's got receipts. He's pointing out a stat that doesn't show up in the points tally, the kilometers led. And in that stat, Piastri is ahead of Norris. That tells a different story, one of quiet consistency, of time spent up front, setting the pace, leading from the front, even if the scoreboard doesn't scream it yet. But the scoreboard is only half the story in Formula One. It's also about perception, politics, marketability, and Norris checks those boxes in bold. The fan base loves him, the media eats him up, he's the face of McLaren merch, the streaming air driver, the Twitch icon. Piastri, he's the guy who just shuts up and drives. But here's the kicker, that kind of attitude used to be called championship material, now it's being sidelined for someone flashier, and Max Verstappen, Mr. No-Nonsense himself, even raised an eyebrow. When told about the Monza order, his reaction was pure disbelief. Just because of a slow stop? You could hear the sarcasm dripping off his voice. And this is coming from the poster boy of Red Bull's team orders era. When Verstappen thinks you've gone too far with favoritism, maybe it's time to reevaluate. Behind the scenes, McLaren has to know this can't go on. The Hungarian GP last year had déjà vu written all over it. Oscar making room, Oscar taking the hit, Oscar playing the good soldier. And now, again? How many more of these before the loyalty wears thin? How many more polite radio messages before they're replaced with transfer talks? Because Piastri's talent isn't going unnoticed. Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, every single one of them would take his call. At 24, with wins under his belt and a growing reputation for composure, he's a hot property. And if McLaren keeps treating him like a backup dancer in the Norris show, don't be surprised if he exits stage left and never looks back. There's something about Oscar Piastri that makes people uncomfortable. Not because he's loud or brash, quite the opposite. He's clinical, composed, a chess player in a sport full of poker faces and bluffs, and that terrifies people who rely on charisma and emotion to sway perception. In the chaos of the Formula One paddock, Piastri is stillness. That's power, that's control. And right now, it's causing a slow meltdown inside McLaren. On the factory floor in Woking, the engineers know the truth. They see the data. They review the telemetry. They know who brings it lap after lap. And while Lando Norris might be louder on camera, Oscar Piastri is louder on track. The irony is, Oscar never has to say it himself. Mark Webber is doing that job for him loud and clear. And Webber's not just praising a driver, he's making a case to the entire grid. Think about it, when a former F1 driver starts comparing lead kilometers instead of points, he's not playing nice anymore. He's targeting the narrative. He's forcing people to question what's really going on behind the orange curtain. He's saying, look beyond the headlines, look at the race pace, look at the decision making, look at the guy who delivers without excuses. And when he says the points don't tell the full story, it's not a compliment, it's a warning shot aimed at the very heart of McLaren's management. Andrea Stella, the man supposedly steering this ship, has been eerily quiet. No statements, no press conference clarity, nothing to address the elephant that just stomped through the Monza paddock. And maybe that silence is strategic. Maybe they're hoping the storm will pass, that social media will move on, but they're underestimating just how loud Piastri's quiet defiance actually is. Every clip of that radio message, I don't really get what's changed here, is being replayed like it's an Oscar-winning monologue. It's not the volume of his voice, it's the weight of the subtext. It's how that sentence captures every feeling of betrayal, confusion, and restraint in one line. And fans aren't just watching, they're picking sides. This isn't just a team dynamics issue anymore, it's a branding crisis. McLaren sells the idea of fairness, of pushing both drivers equally, of letting them race, but when decisions on race day don't reflect that, the brand fractures and you can feel the stress lines forming. Norris didn't even respond when his engineer apologized after the botched pit stop. Cold, detached, like he expected the favor. That says a lot more than any public interview ever could. And the fans, they see it. F1 is no longer just about what happens on track. It's about the optics, the narrative, the perception war. And McLaren is starting to lose control of theirs. Clips go viral in seconds. Fans dissect radio messages like courtroom audio, and when the consensus starts turning against you, it spreads fast. Even Jamie Chadwick, a voice of reason on Sky Sports, pointed out the awkwardness of McLaren's choices. When commentators drop diplomacy and just call it like it is, you know the PR armor has cracked. What makes all of this even more intense is timing. Piastri's value is peaking. He's young, fast, respected, and now sympathetic, is being seen as the calm, wrongly sidelined talent. And that's dangerous for McLaren because when a driver becomes the emotional favorite of the fan base, every mistake from the team becomes a betrayal. And betrayals don't get forgotten. They fester, they build momentum, and sometimes they lead to exits. Oscar Piastri's next move might not come with fanfare, but it'll change everything. That's how these shifts happen in Formula One. Quietly at first, a conversation between managers, a glance in the paddock, a clause revisited in a contract. Then all of a sudden, the announcement hits like a thunderclap. And by the time the fans process it, it's already done. That's what McLaren is risking right now. A slow bleed that ends in a seismic loss. Team loyalty is a fragile thing. It's built on mutual respect, not just race wins. And every time Piastri is told to step aside for a teammate, regardless of the circumstance, that foundation weakens. He may smile for the cameras, he may nod politely in interviews, but those moments chip away at something deeper, and Mark Webber knows it. That's why his words have turned sharper, more deliberate. He's preparing the ground for a departure, not just if it happens, but when. Because let's be honest, the F1 driver market is a minefield of potential and politics. Red Bull will need a Verstappen alternative eventually. Mercedes still hasn't written the last chapter of the Hamilton era. Ferrari has the prestige, but not the consistency, and every single one of them would roll out the red carpet for someone like Oscar. Not just for his pace, but for his composure, his no-drama profile, his ability to deliver under pressure without needing the spotlight. That's gold in this sport. McLaren can't afford to pretend this is business as usual. It's not just about team orders anymore. It's about how often they fall on the same ears. It's about who gets protected when things go wrong and who gets sacrificed. And when fans start picking up on those patterns, you don't just lose support, you lose leverage. Suddenly, your second driver is your most valuable asset and he's eyeing the door. That's how teams collapse from the inside. The most telling sign, Piastri's silence. It's no longer the silence of deference, it's calculation. Every word he doesn't say is a message in itself. He's playing the long game, letting the situation speak for itself. And the more this continues, the more it feels like a setup for a clean exit. No drama, no public explosions, just a move that says, I gave you my best and you chose someone else. And what about Lando Norris? He's talented, no doubt, one of the fastest on the grid when the car behaves, but there's a sense that he's been protected, sheltered, given a status that perhaps hasn't always been earned purely on merit. McLaren's fear of losing their golden boy may be blinding them to the driver who's already outperforming him on every meaningful metric except headline. And that miscalculation could cost them dearly. The bigger picture is this. Formula One is a memory game. It remembers who got favored, who got silenced, who got pushed aside, and when it comes time to rebuild, those choices echo. McLaren's future depends on whether they can see through the marketing fog and recognize where their real strength lies, because drivers like Piastri don't come around often. And once they walk, they don't come back. 2026 is approaching faster than it seems. New regulations, new partnerships, new pecking orders. It could be the fresh start McLaren desperately needs, or the beginning of a decline triggered by internal politics. The difference will come down to one decision. Do they back the driver, who's proven his worth lap by lap, or the one they've built their image around? That decision, whether made publicly or behind closed doors, will define McLaren's legacy. And if they get it wrong, Oscar Piastri won't say much. He'll just leave, and the silence he leaves behind will be deafening.